Have you ever noticed how you can be in a room full of people and still feel completely alone? Not just quiet, not just introverted, but genuinely isolated despite the laughter around you, the conversations flowing, the apparent warmth of human connection. You sit there watching faces light up with what seems like joy, hearing voices rise and fall in animated discussion, witnessing what appears to be genuine human bonding. And yet, you feel like you're watching it all through bulletproof glass. You've probably blamed yourself for this feeling countless times. You've thought maybe you're too sensitive, too complicated, too hard to understand. Maybe you've convinced yourself that you need to try harder, be more social, more available, more like them. Perhaps you've spent hours analyzing your own behavior, wondering what's wrong with you that you can't seem to plug into the same frequency that everyone else operates on so effortlessly. But what if I told you that the problem isn't you at all? What if the loneliness you feel isn't because you're isolated, but because you're surrounded by people who have nothing real inside them, people who have traded their depth for approval, their authenticity for acceptance, their soul for the safety of blending in? What if your loneliness isn't a defect in your character, but evidence that you still have a character to protect? This isn't about antisocial behavior or misanthropy. This is about recognizing a truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. That the majority of human interactions are performances, not connections. That most people you encounter daily are not really there. They're operating from scripts, playing roles, reciting lines they've memorized from the cultural handbook of acceptable responses. They've become so skilled at this performance that they've forgotten they're performing at all. Erich Fromm, one of the most penetrating minds in psychology, understood this better than anyone. He wrote about what he called the escape from freedom, the tendency of people to abandon their true selves to avoid the anxiety of being real. And once they make that trade, they become what Fromm called automaton conformists, people who look human but have hollowed themselves out from the inside. They walk among us like sophisticated robots, programmed with the right responses, the right emotions, the right opinions, but lacking any genuine core from which these responses emerge. You feel this emptiness when you interact with them. There's something missing, something essential that should be there, but isn't. It's like talking to a beautifully painted shell. The form is perfect, but there's nothing alive inside. And this absence isn't just uncomfortable, it's deeply disturbing to anyone who still maintains connection to their authentic self. Because on some primal level, you recognize that you're not talking to a person. You're talking to a persona that has consumed the person completely. This recognition creates a particular kind of horror. You realize you're living in a world populated by beings who have voluntarily erased themselves, who have chosen the comfort of non-existence over the challenge of being real. And worse, they expect you to do the same. They can't understand why you insist on being complicated when simplicity is so much easier. Why you insist on feeling deeply when surface emotions require so much less energy. Why you insist on thinking original thoughts when borrowed ones work just fine. These aren't bad people. They're not evil or malicious. They're just empty. They've spent so long performing the role of who they think they should be that they've forgotten who they actually are underneath the mask. The tragedy is that most of them don't even realize they're performing. They believe their own act so completely that they've lost access to anything genuine beneath it. They've become method actors who never learned how to step out of character. You feel their emptiness when they speak. Their words are borrowed from movies, from social media, from whatever everyone else is saying. They have opinions, but they're not really theirs. They're downloaded from the collective consciousness of their social group. They express outrage about things they're supposed to be outraged about, enthusiasm for things they're supposed to enjoy, concern for causes they're supposed to care about, but none of it emerges from any authentic internal experience. They have emotions, but they're performed rather than felt, displayed like badges of normalcy rather than experienced as authentic responses to life. Watch them closely and you'll see the micro delay, the split second, where they check their internal database for the appropriate emotional response before displaying it. They've learned to simulate the full range of human feeling without ever actually accessing any of it. They have relationships, but they're transactional rather than genuine, based on what each person can provide rather than who they actually are. They collect friends like trophies, maintain connections like investments, and engage in intimacy like a business transaction. Love becomes a performance they've learned to execute, complete with the right words, the right gestures, the right timing, but devoid of any actual feeling. And here's what's devastating about being around these people. They need you to be empty too. Your depth makes them uncomfortable because it reminds them of something they've lost. Your authenticity threatens their carefully constructed facade because it exposes how artificial theirs is. Your silence forces them to hear the echo of their own hollowness, and they can't stand that sound. When you speak from a place of genuine feeling or original thought, it creates a dissonance that they can't tolerate. It's like playing a real instrument in an orchestra of synthesizers. The sound is so different, so alive, that it makes everything else sound fake by comparison. They can sense this difference even if they can't articulate it, and it makes them profoundly uncomfortable. Fromm observed that empty people are terrified of genuine individuals because authenticity exposes the lie they're living. So they pressure you to join their performance. They mock your seriousness, dismiss your insights, and make you feel strange for caring about things that matter. They don't do this consciously. They do it because your realness is a mirror they can't bear to look into. Your authenticity threatens the elaborate defense system they've built around their emptiness. The most insidious part of this dynamic is how they make you doubt yourself. When you're surrounded by people who respond to everything with the same programmed reactions, who laugh at the same triggers, who get upset about the same socially approved grievances, your authentic responses start to feel wrong. You begin to question whether you're too serious, too deep, too much. You start to wonder if maybe you should learn to be more like them, lighter, easier, more superficial. But every time you try to simplify yourself, to tone down your intensity, to participate in their performance, something inside you dies. You feel yourself becoming smaller, dimmer, less alive. Because what they're asking you to do isn't just to change your behavior, it's to abandon your soul. And some part of you knows that once you make that trade, you can never get it back. This is why you feel drained after spending time with certain people, even when the interaction seemed pleasant on the surface. You're not exchanging energy with them. You're pouring your life force into a void. They take your attention, your empathy, your genuine responses, and give you nothing real in return. It's like trying to have a conversation with an echo. You put something out, and you get back a distorted version of what you gave, but nothing new, nothing alive, nothing that feeds your soul. The conversations feel scripted because they are. These people have learned to navigate social situations through pattern recognition rather than genuine engagement. They've memorized the appropriate responses to different types of input, and they deliver these responses with the mechanical precision of a well-programmed chatbot. They can simulate concern, simulate interest, simulate depth, but they can't access the real thing because they've lost touch with it entirely. You'll notice this particularly in their questions. They ask how you are, but they don't actually want to know. They're just executing a social protocol. When you give them an honest answer, when you tell them you're struggling with something real, grappling with something meaningful, you can see their eyes glaze over. They're waiting for you to finish so they can deliver their pre-programmed response and move on to safer territory. And you, being a person of substance, keep trying to find something real in them. You keep digging, keep giving them chances, keep hoping that if you're patient enough, vulnerable enough, understanding enough, you'll reach the human being beneath the performance. But there's nothing there to reach. The performance has become the person. The mask has fused with the face so completely that removing it would leave nothing behind. This creates a particularly cruel dynamic. The more real you are with them, the more uncomfortable they become. The more depth you offer, the more shallow they become in response. It's as if authenticity is threatening to them, as if your willingness to be genuine highlights their inability to be the same. They respond to your depth with deflection, to your vulnerability with platitudes, to your complexity with oversimplification. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the concentration camps, wrote about what he called existential vacuum, the emptiness that occurs when people lose touch with meaning, purpose, and authentic connection. He observed that this emptiness is epidemic in modern society, creating people who are physically present but spiritually absent. They go through the motions of living without ever really being alive. What Frankl understood, and what you're beginning to recognize, is that this spiritual absence isn't a temporary condition or a phase people go through. For many, it's a permanent state. They've so thoroughly disconnected from their authentic selves that they no longer have access to genuine feeling, genuine thought, or genuine connection. They exist in a kind of living death, animated by social programming rather than by any inner spark of life. This creates a particularly cruel irony. The more real you are, the more isolated you feel in a world full of people. Your authenticity becomes a barrier to connection rather than a bridge to it, because most people can only connect at the level of performance, and you refuse to perform. You insist on being real in a world that has agreed to be fake, and this makes you a stranger in your own species. The tragedy is that they don't even know what they're missing. They've never experienced genuine connection, so they don't realize that what they call connection is just mutual performance. They've never felt authentic emotion, so they don't know that what they call feeling is just sophisticated mimicry. They've never had an original thought, so they don't understand that what they call thinking is just rearranging borrowed concepts. And because they don't know what they're missing, they can't understand why you're not satisfied with what they offer. They genuinely believe that their performance is as good as authenticity, that their simulation is as valuable as the real thing. When you reject their shallow offerings, they're baffled. When you insist on something deeper, they're confused. When you walk away from their emptiness, they're hurt. Not because they actually care about you, but because you've disrupted their comfortable illusion. When you start to understand this, when you begin to see the emptiness for what it is, you face a choice that will define the rest of your life. You can continue trying to connect with people who have disconnected from themselves, or you can accept the loneliness that comes with being real in a world full of performers. This is perhaps the most difficult decision any authentic person has to make, whether to compromise your integrity for the illusion of connection, or maintain your authenticity at the cost of feeling perpetually alone. Most people choose the performance. It's easier, it's safer. It requires no risk, no vulnerability, no depth. You can coast through life having pleasant interactions with pleasant people and never have to face the terror of being truly seen or the responsibility of truly seeing others. You can laugh at the right jokes, express the right opinions, feel the right emotions at the right times, and never have to grapple with the messy, complicated, often painful reality of authentic human experience. The rewards for choosing performance are immediate and obvious. You fit in. You're liked. You're invited to things. People find you easy to be around because you make no demands on their authenticity. You become a safe person, someone who won't challenge them to be more than they are, someone who won't remind them of what they've lost. In a world full of empty people, being empty yourself is the path of least resistance. But some people like you, can't make that choice. You'd rather be lonely than fake. You'd rather feel isolated than compromise your authenticity. You'd rather sit in the discomfort of being misunderstood than pretend to be someone you're not. This isn't stubbornness or pride. It's a fundamental inability to betray yourself. Your soul simply won't let you participate in the mass delusion of connection without substance. This choice comes with a heavy price. You'll be seen as difficult, complicated, too much. You'll be accused of being pretentious, of thinking you're better than everyone else, of being unable to just relax and have fun. People will tell you that you take things too seriously, that you need to lighten up, that you're making life harder than it needs to be. And sometimes, in your darker moments, you'll wonder if they're right. Frankl called this tragic optimism, the ability to maintain hope and meaning even in the face of suffering. He understood that authentic people often feel alone, not because they're broken, but because they refuse to break themselves to fit into a broken world. Your loneliness isn't a sign of failure. It's evidence that you still have something real to protect. The world will try to convince you that this is wrong, that you should learn to be more flexible, more adaptable, more willing to meet people where they are. But where they are is nowhere. They're lost in a labyrinth of borrowed thoughts and performed emotions, and they want you to get lost with them. They can't stand the idea that someone might have found a way to remain real because it highlights their own inauthenticity. This is why authentic people often report feeling like aliens on their own planet. You're not imagining this sense of disconnection. You really are different from most of the people around you. You've maintained something that they've lost, preserved something that they've traded away. And in a world where the majority has chosen emptiness over authenticity, being real makes you a minority. The isolation can be overwhelming at times. You'll go to parties and feel like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. You'll have conversations that feel like elaborate theatrical productions in which you're the only one not reading from a script. You'll watch people form what they call friendships and wonder how they can be satisfied with such hollow connections. You'll see them fall in love with each other's performances and wonder if they even know what love actually is. But here's what you must understand. This isolation is not punishment for being real. It's protection. Your inability to connect with empty people isn't a flaw in your design. It's a feature. Your soul is protecting you from wasting your precious energy on those who can't reciprocate its depth. Your authenticity is a filter, keeping out what would harm you and making space for what would heal you. If this is resonating with you, if you're tired of feeling like an alien in your own species, subscribe to this channel, because what we're exploring here isn't just psychology. It's the map back to your own soul. And there are more of us out here than you think. This journey we're on together isn't about becoming less sensitive or more tolerant of emptiness. It's about understanding that your sensitivity is a gift, even when it feels like a curse. The loneliness you feel isn't a flaw in your character. It's evidence of your integrity. It's proof that you haven't sold out, haven't given up, haven't traded your depth for shallow comfort. It's the price you pay for refusing to participate in the mass hallucination of connection without substance. And while this price can feel overwhelming at times, it's also what keeps you alive in the truest sense of the word. Understanding this distinction is crucial. There's a difference between being alone and being lonely, and there's a difference between your loneliness and theirs. When empty people feel lonely, it's because they've lost connection with themselves and can't find anyone else to fill the void. When you feel lonely, it's because you maintain connection with yourself and can't find others who meet you at that level of depth. And here's what nobody tells you about this kind of loneliness. It's not empty the way theirs is. Your solitude is full. It's rich with thought, with feeling, with the kind of internal life that most people have abandoned. You're not lonely because you're alone. You're lonely because you're awake in a world of sleepwalkers. Your loneliness has weight, has substance, has meaning. It's the loneliness of someone who still has a self to be lonely with. The ancient Greeks had a word for this, metanoia, a fundamental change of mind that leads to a new way of seeing reality. When you recognize the emptiness in others, you undergo your own metanoia. You stop trying to force connections that can't exist. You stop expecting depth from people who live on the surface. You stop apologizing for being substantial in a world that rewards superficiality. This shift in perception is both devastating and liberating. This recognition is devastating because it means accepting that most of the connections you thought you had were illusions. Those people you considered friends were relating to your performance, not your authentic self. Those family members who claimed to love you were loving their idea of who you should be, not who you actually are. Those romantic partners who said they understood you were understanding only the parts of you that fit their narrative. The real you, the deep, complex, sometimes difficult real you, has been largely invisible to most people in your life. You realize that you've been living in a world of mutual pretense, where everyone agrees to see only the surfaces of each other and call it intimacy. You understand that most of what passes for human connection is just sophisticated loneliness management, people using each other to avoid facing their own emptiness rather than genuinely connecting with each other's fullness. But this recognition is also profoundly liberating because it frees you to seek and create genuine connections with the few people who, like you, have chosen authenticity over acceptance. It allows you to stop wasting your energy trying to connect with people who are incapable of real connection. It gives you permission to be selective, to hold out for something real rather than settling for something that merely resembles connection. When you stop trying to force connections with empty people, something remarkable happens. You become available for real connection in a way you never were before. You stop scattering your energy among dozens of hollow relationships and start conserving it for the few that have the potential to be genuine. You stop performing and start being, and this authenticity acts like a beacon for others who are also seeking something real. These people exist. They're rare, but they're real. They're the ones who feel like home when you meet them. The ones who don't need you to perform or pretend. The ones who can sit in silence with you without feeling the need to fill it with noise. The ones who see you and don't look away. When you find these people, and you will find them once you stop trying to connect with everyone, the quality of connection is so profound that it makes all the loneliness worthwhile. One genuine connection is worth 1,000 hollow ones. One person who truly sees you is worth more than 100 who only see your performance. One conversation that touches your soul is more nourishing than years of surface-level chatter. This is the mathematics of authentic connection. Quality multiplies value in ways that quantity never can. The path forward isn't about becoming less sensitive or more tolerant of emptiness. It's about accepting that your sensitivity is a gift, even when it feels like a curse. It's about understanding that your inability to connect with hollow people isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's your soul's way of protecting you from wasting your life force on those who can't reciprocate its depth. Your loneliness is a compass, pointing you away from what drains you and toward what nourishes you. Stop trying to force connections that don't exist. Stop feeling guilty for wanting more than surface-level interaction. Stop apologizing for being deep in a shallow world. Your loneliness isn't a problem to be solved. It's a signal to be heeded. It's telling you that you're in the wrong place, with the wrong people, trying to create the wrong kind of connection. Listen to it, and remember this: emptiness recognizes emptiness, but substance recognizes substance too. When you stop trying to connect with everyone, you become available to connect with the right ones. When you stop performing for the crowd, you become visible to your true tribe. When you stop trying to fit in with people who have nothing inside them, you create space for people who have everything inside them to find you. Your authenticity is not a barrier to connection, it's a filter. It keeps out what would harm you and attracts what would heal you. The loneliness you feel now is temporary, but the connections you'll make when you find your people will be eternal. Quality over quantity isn't just a dating principle, it's a life principle. And anyone who has maintained their authenticity in a world that punishes it deserves nothing less than the highest quality connections. You're not lonely. You're just surrounded by the wrong people. And the moment you accept that, you become free to find the right ones. The moment you stop trying to connect with those who have nothing to offer, you become available to receive from those who have everything to give. Your loneliness ends not when you learn to tolerate emptiness, but when you find others who share your fullness. If this truth hits something deep inside you, if you're ready to stop apologizing for your depth, subscribe. Because this journey we're on together, it's not about becoming less. It's about finding the others who are brave enough to be more. Comment below, I choose substance over surface. Let's see how many of us are out here, waiting for real connection in a world full of empty performers. Your people are looking for you too, and the signal they're following is your refusal to be anything less than real.